Pat Forde, Sports Illustrated senior writer, as we somehow make the smooth segue in here. Good morning, Pat. How are you?
I'm good. I vote for Washington monuments.
Well, yeah, but we've been tearing down monuments, haven't we? And,
We have.
Yeah.
We have.
I know.
It would actually make for an ugly helmet, too, with just the Washington monument on the side.
How was your week, by the way?
Insane, really. I didn't expect it, but that's kind of how this whole thing has gone. It was really busy trying to keep up with what the Big Ten was doing, the Pac-12 was doing, the Ivy League was doing. Things are happening. It's and it seems like the pace of the deconstruction of the season is accelerating.
Did the Ivy League wag the dog here?
Maybe. It's a little different. They certainly did last March in basketball. Football's a little different because football is such a bigger revenue generator for the Power Five and really all of FBS versus where the Ivy League plays it. But they set a tone of we're pulling back. And I think you saw that some other conferences were quick to follow that. Obviously, the Big Ten, which a lot of other conferences were surprised and a little bit annoyed that they went that quickly and basically unilaterally that way. And then the Pac-12 goes to conference only. And I think the other Power Five conferences probably will eventually follow by the end of the month.
All right, explain this to me because you're a lot smarter about this than I am. Rutgers has out-of-conference games, 2 in New Jersey and 1 in Pennsylvania against Temple, but they're going to get rid of those and let them fly across country to Nebraska. So explain that to me here of the logic of the Big Ten.
Well, there's the big logical hole in this. Now, what the Big Ten will say is the biggest reason they went to this conference only thing is that they can control the whole schedule and basically space out 9 or 10 games across 13 weeks because they feel like it's inevitable that there's going to be some weeks when you're going to have, X number of positive cases of the virus and not be able to play. And if it's with a league opponent, they're like, okay, we can just shift that around and make this work.
Okay.
And I think that they just feel like it's a lot more easy to maneuver across the course of a schedule when you take some weeks out of it and add some open dates there. The other thing, too, Dan, is that at least all the Big Ten teams can say, we're testing the same way. We've got the same protocols. We're all going to decide on Thursday, hey, is your team well enough to go play on Saturday? As opposed to when you're playing Monmouth or Temple, you can't necessarily say they're doing things the same way.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was another way of delaying the season. If we took out those non-conference games that you start the season with, that you can buy yourself a little bit of time. And I don't know if that's part of this as well, that maybe you start to leak into October more than playing games in September.
Could be, and we'll find out because the Big Ten does have some early conference games scheduled. So we'll see. I think they're hoping to try to hammer out something of a schedule here by the end of this week. That may be too soon, but we may start hearing some word whether that is the plan, whether just to push everything back to October 1st. I think they'd probably rather go by mid-September at least, and like I said, use some of those weeks for cushion in case they have cancellations or postponements during the season.
How optimistic are you right now that we have Power 5 conference football games?
Not very. I mean, it's been nothing but dwindling confidence throughout July. It's funny, the ebbs and flows of this thing, as we've talked about before, where, late May, halfway into June, people are really bullish and we're going to play and we're going to have at least 50% filled capacity stands, maybe even 100%. And then a month later, now we're like, boy, I don't know that we're going to play. There's more and more people looking at the spring, I think, as a possibility, although that has its own problems. I mean, we could lose so many of the top players then who just simply say, I'm not going to play. But I'd say I feel less than 50% sure that we will play football in the fall.
I go back to what Kirk Herbstreit said. I think that was in March. And remember, everybody came out of the woodwork and attacked him, where he said, I'm paraphrasing, that we might not have college football. He doesn't see it happening. And here we are right now. And what Herbie said back in March, unfortunately, may come to fruition.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this, I mean, really, you can kind of look at this whole thing as just been this state of denial. And I've been part of it for Americans, probably in general, but American sports fans of like every time something's been taken off the table, like, what? Really? There's no way. No, the Ivy League, they're not going to play their basketball tournament. That's crazy. Well, sure. Then we're not going to play an NCAA tournament. And then we're not going to have any spring sports. And then the Olympics get postponed and the Masters and so on and so on and so on. And now, I mean, everybody was like, surely we'll still have football. And I think the people that looked at it, the pretty sober eye back in the spring and said, we may not, were the ones that were ahead of the game.
And I also wonder, we're talking to Pat Forde from Sports Illustrated. I'm wondering about these big name players in college football. That are they going to play this season? Would we hold it against them? We have players who sit out a bowl game, but if you're Trevor Lawrence or some of these other players, I just wonder the risk and the reward of playing a season. And do we have players who opt out of the season because they want to get ready for the 2021 draft?
I think we have dozens of them, possibly even hundreds. Who knows? But I think if you feel pretty secure that you are going to be a first or second round draft pick, you're probably out. Other guys, who may be third through fifth round picks, you're like, okay, I want to try to improve my status still. So maybe I want to play. But I think there will be some of them too will say it's just not worth getting injured. I think it's going to be a really, really difficult thing if it's a spring season for schools to be able to put anything close to a full high-powered lineup on the field. If you are at a Power 5 team with a bunch of pro prospects, it's gonna be a major attrition.
What's Notre Dame do?
Well, that's a great question. I wrote about that way back in, was it April or May? I don't know. But I talked to Jack Swarbrick, then the athletic director, and he said that the ACC alliance basically would help them, and it has. They've got 6 games scheduled with ACC teams. They should play all of those. John Swofford, the commissioner, has said that. Navy absolutely wants to play them. That gets them to 7. Beyond that, we'll see. I would imagine Western Michigan is still out there saying, yeah, man, we're scheduled in there. Please let us play. Let us go to Notre Dame Stadium and play that game for the money and the exposure. So maybe that gets you to 8. And after that, I don't know. If it's a spring season, you may not get more than 8, maybe 8 or 9 games.
If I made you the head of the NCAA, Mark Emmert, and you actually had power, what would you do?
That's the thing. This is laid bare how little power they have over anything.
Yeah.
But first of all, what I would do, there would be uniform testing and eligibility procedures as far as when players could practice, when they could play, when teams could play. Secondly, I would have every conference commissioner in Indianapolis. If the SEC ADs could meet in person today in Birmingham, you could have everybody in Indy and say, we need a completely uniform schedule here. We don't need this conference saying that and this other conference doing something different. We've got to have some sort of unified schedule here that actually is for the good of everyone, as opposed to every conference being out for themselves.
Well, we liken it to the 5 mob families, the Power 5, and then there's no boss over those 5 mafia families. That's what you have here.
It is. That's why all of a sudden, Michael Corleone can go settle all family business one day without consulting the rest of them. And it's mayhem. It really is. We'll see if they actually come to some uniform decision, but there is absolutely no unifying power involved here.
Great to talk to you again, Pat. Thank you.
My pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
That's Pat Forde, covers college sports for Sports Illustrated. They're a senior writer.